Okay, a bit of a monumental day today at the Rusty Beauty shop. Today we picked up the head for the TR4 engine rebuild project, and we picked up the crank. This I've brought over to Alin to talk about what we're going to do as far as the rocker shaft is concerned. I think we have a way to figure this out. So we've got some of our key components back. So I think we're pretty much ready to start. I think we have all of our parts now to start our engine build process. So we're good to go there. So we'll probably start that within the next probably few days, or maybe after Easter basically. And we'll start putting it back together slowly. We'll do an hour, power hour here and there, probably in the evenings, to get this back together so we can get the car ready for springtime. Yeah. It's been so long I've forgotten how to take videos.
Hello? Hello? Cheftush?
Anyway, we're at the Rusty Beauty shop, and it's early May, and finally a day of sun without rain in the forecast. So we are back on the 1962 Triumph TR4 project, and specifically the engine rebuild. So I've come back today to try to get this block prepped for paint, and we want to try to clean these cylinders up a little bit. They're actually in pretty good shape, so just want to clean these bores up a little bit, and specifically the figure 8 gasket sealing surfaces. And then we'll get it all cleaned up and degreased and ready for paint, so we can get on to the next steps of rebuilding this. So that's what we're planning on doing today, taking advantage of the good weather and getting some black spray paint on this block. All right, so I think we've got it clean enough now that we're gonna break out the spray paint, and things are looking good. We got the front cover cleaned up, the timing change cover. It was previously painted, but we found a couple areas where the paint had sort of stripped off, hadn't been prepped properly, so we just scuffed that back up, and got everything covered up that needs to be covered up, I hope. Oil galleries are covered, all the openings are covered on this side. So yeah, I think we're ready to go. Hopefully the paint sticks. It's been brake cleaned and then panel prepped. So anyway, if it sticks, it sticks. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Some of it will stick, right? It'll match the patina of the TR4. All right, we've got 3 coats of semi-gloss black on it now, high heat, of course, and we've just unmasked the side of it anyway. And I think it's looking good. We'll let it sit out here and bake for the rest of the day, and then Lynn can put it in tonight once it's dried a little bit more. That's looking good. It'll look better when it gets back in the engine bay. But anyway, we'll let this dry, and then we'll start putting it back together, starting with the cam bearings. That'll be first order of operation. All right, Friday afternoon, we are at the Rusty Beauty shop, and in company of the Orange Peeler, as the owner calls his car. And we are back to work on the 62 Triumph TR4 engine rebuild. And the last segment of our section of video I took was painting the block. So it seems like it's dried up nicely. That was a couple of days ago. So we're now back to continue on. And I think what we'll do first is get it unwrapped, maybe clean it up a little bit more on the inside before we probably tap out all of the holes and blow some oil passages out, get that sort of cleaned out before we do the first step of rebuilding this engine up, and that will be to do the cam bearings. So we'll get there eventually, but let's get this unwrapped and cleaned up a little bit before we get to that point. All right, we have the cam bearings ready to go, and we have the cam set screws ready to go, the oil gallery plugs ready to go, all cleaned up. So we've got the block cleaned up as best as it's going to get. We've got it brake cleaned and blown out. Oil passageways are clean. It's as clean as it's going to get at the moment. So we're just about to break out the cam bearing installation tool, which we have on the bench over here. So Alin's got an excellent video on installing cam bearings in a TR4 engine already, so I'm not going to bore you with going through the process. I'll put a link up in the corner if you want to watch that. We're going to follow that process carefully, make sure that we have the bearings lined up according to the oil gallery holes and the keeper holes. The rearmost one being the most critical because that feeds oil to the head as well as to the crank. So there's actually 2 oil passages on the rear cam bearing versus the other 2. So that's the most critical one that you get properly installed. So we're going to do that one first. So without much more ado, let's get crack-a-lackin', right?
Let's get crack-a-lackin'.
There you go. All right, it's another day at the Rusty Beauty shop. We were installing cam bearings in the last video segment and then ran into a little bit of an issue. And fortunately, I have a spare set of parts. Unfortunately, I couldn't find them for a period of time, but now we've recovered and found my spares that I require because we kind of screwed up a little bit on the front cam bearing when we were putting it in. I'm not sure if I'll be able to show this to you or not, but as you know, on the side of the block, there's a little keeper screw that actually fits into this hole here. And I don't know if this will focus or not. Oh yeah, I think it will there. You can actually see this little dimple here in the bearing, which means we didn't quite get the little tip of the screw lined up properly with this opening. And what's happened is we've ended up pushing this inwards and dimpling the bearing on the inside. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see the little dimple at the bottom there on the inside. So we kind of ruined this, there you can probably see it there. Kind of ruined this bearing when we installed it the last time. So anyway, sorry?
It wasn't me.
It was us. We don't blame each other, even though it was Alin's fault. Anyway, we're going to install a new one. We've got a new one and we've got a backup. So hopefully we won't need to order more parts. So that's what we're going to do now. We'll set up on time lapse again and try to get this one installed in correctly. So if anybody's counting on this time lapse, is this number 3 or number 4? Anyway, this front one's proving to be a bit of a challenge. A couple times we knocked it through because we didn't have the holes aligned for the pilot screw or the keeper screw on the side. And on the last time through, we thought we had it aligned, but then we realized that the bearing, or not the bearing, yeah, I guess the oil hole in the bearing, in the crank bearing surface was not aligned properly. So we've just pushed it through again. Now we're on, I think, the 4th or 5th attempt. We lost count. I'm getting good at pushing it through and, you know, that kind of stuff. My arm's getting a little tired from hammering, but other than that, we're good. All right, head studs are installed, or cleaned and installed. So next step is we're going to unpack our new piston liners, or the liners, and we're going to check to make sure we have the protrusion. So we're going to grab our figure 8 gaskets as well. We've got a couple different sets of those just in case. I believe I have a copper figure 8 gasket and a steel figure 8 gasket. I'm not quite sure which one we're going to go with yet. Probably the copper. But anyway, we're going to do that now, figure out our cylinder liner protrusion, and then we'll move on from there. All right, so we're on to the next step, and we've got the new liners and pistons unpacked. We've got the liners and the pistons numbered. You want to make sure you don't match those. So obviously one goes with one, etc. Got our rings standing by over there for later on. We're not going to need those for a little while. So we've got a couple of different options as far as the figure 8 gaskets are concerned. We have a steel one, we have a copper one. There's the Moss part number for the copper ones if you're interested. So I think we're going to start with the copper ones, and we'll see what the protrusion looks like after we, that scared me. Somebody working on some hubs over there. So anyway, we'll check the protrusion after we get the hold downs installed to keep the liners in place. And we'll come back and give you an update. All right, we've got the block set up with the liners installed with the copper figure 8 gaskets. And we're looking for a liner protrusion of 0.003 to 0.005. And we can tell by just physically looking at these without even doing a measurement, although we have made a measurement, that they are way too far or too high of a protrusion out of the block. So obviously the copper is a lot more compressible than the steel is going to be, but I think what we're going to do is we're going to pull these back out and we're going to install the steel ones and see where they sit with the steel figure 8s in place, and take some measurements there. So might be more comfortable just using the steel ones. All right, we've put the steel figure 8 gaskets back in, and we've torqued these down, not torqued them down, but tightened them down enough just to compress the sleeves a little bit. And we checked the protrusion. And I don't know if I mentioned already, so we're looking for 0.003 to 0.005, and these are at 0.005 now with the steel figure 8 gasket. So what we were finding with the copper ones is they're actually a slightly larger outer diameter on the copper ones. And when we're pulling them out, I don't know if I'm going to be able to show you this or not, but you can actually see the edges kind of dimpled in a location, which was probably keeping the liners up. You can probably see it there. I think you can see it there. So obviously that was keeping the liners up. So these are a little bit larger outer diameter. Like I said, they wouldn't fit down within the recesses in the block. So the steel seems to fit a little bit better. So we're going to go with the steel. On to the next step. All right, it's another day back at the Rusty Beauties shop, and we're working on the 1962 Triumph TR4 Engine Rebuild series. Yesterday we left off at doing the piston liner protrusion, so that is all good to go. So today we're working on camshaft, sorry. So camshaft end float we wanted to check before we install the camshaft into the block. So we're just following the shop manual. The Bentley manual, page 114, has the end float process for the camshaft. So we've assembled the cam gear and the bearing the front bearing for the cam here together, and just tighten these down. The retaining bolts at the front of the sprocket. And then what you want to do is you want to take a feeler gauge and you want to measure what your end float is here between the last journal here and the keeper. And your measurements are supposed to be between 003 and 0075. So we've just done that measurement here with the pulley fully pulled to the front, and we're perfectly at 003. So we're good as far as the end float's concerned there on the camshaft. So we'll go ahead, lube this up, and insert it in the block. One thing I forgot to mention in the last video segment is you're probably wondering what cam we've decided to go with. So we're going to go with a little bit of increased performance in this rebuild of the TR4 engine. So we've got a fast road camshaft here from Moss Motors. So we're going to pair that up with a nice set of Weber carburetors. And we've already got the head work done on this, so we'll talk a little bit more about that as we move along. So anyway, back to getting this installed into the block. Well, these cam bearings haven't been really cooperating with us, so putting the cam in, we've got a little bit of a hard stop on the narrow bearing for the middle bearing. So we've stopped, and we're just checking to see if we have a bit of protrusion from the set screw.
Yeah.
So I think what we're going to do now is we're going to push that narrow bearing out, and we're going to use our last and final bearing and put that in its place and see if that solves the issue. So wish us luck. These cam bearings are giving us fits. Anyway, we had a little tiny burr on the very last cam bearing, and we stopped basically to give that a little look at and just a little bit of a quick file down. So we've managed to fix that, and now the cam fits nicely where it should. So all I'm going to do now is temporarily put on the front cam bearing block, and just to keep that cam from floating at the front here. Obviously this can't go on until the front engine plate goes on, so we'll remove this at a later date. But anyway, the cam is in the block away safely for now, and we'll come back to it in the future. All right, we're on to the next phase of the rebuild. So we've got our bearing caps here for the crank in order, rear, middle, front, sealing block. We've got our seal housing on the rear here, which is the upgraded seal with the split seal. So we're just about to insert that and center it with our home-built mandrel here. So I think it's called a mandrel.
Yep.
Close enough. So we got everything ready to go. We got the seal, we got the felts, our bolts standing by, and our thrust washers. Eventually we'll need those. So we think I've got everything ready to go here as far as getting the crank in the block. So everything is cleaned, everything is washed, everything's prepped. So the only thing I'm missing are the new bearings. They're the old bearings there, but I'll grab those from the parts bin shortly. I know I have those for sure. Anyway, so I'm going to work on getting this rear seal housing centered, and then we'll come back for the next step. Okay, we grabbed our bearings. We're actually going to be using King bearings for this. These are bimetal, and they are 10 under for the crank. So there you go. I like King bearings, so And that's what I go with. All right, we have the rear cap installed with the seal housing in the mandrel. You can probably just see that in there. So we've aligned or centered the seal housing in the mandrel. We've pushed it tight closed, and everything looks good. So we've just tightened or snugged those bolts up so that seal housing doesn't move. Now we can remove the rear cap, and we're good to go as far as the seal housing is concerned. Bella, don't let Alin see you sleeping on top of his Spitfire. There will be trouble. All right, back at the Rusty Beauty shop after a long hiatus. It's June 18th. I can't remember the last time I worked on this. Anyway, didn't get too far. We were doing the mandrel in the rear seal to set that up. So centralize the rear seal. So we're just about to take this rear cap off to get the mandrel tool out, and then we can probably get into dry fitting the crank in and doing the thrust washers. Does that sound about right?
Sure.
Okay, let's get crack-a-lackin'.
Let's get crack-a-lackin'.
All right, here's the freshly ground crank, and we're just blowing through all the passages to make sure everything's clear before we start to utilize it. And we are going to put the bearing shells in, and we're going to figure out what thrust washers we need. So we'll put the bearing shells in, a little bit of lube, fit the crank, and do the thrust washer check, and then we'll move on to the next step. All right, the main bearings are in and lubed. We're going with the King bearings. And these are 10 under. So, and these are the bimetal bearings, not the tri-metal. So Alin's just lubing up the oil seal, the rear seal, and we're gonna fit it to the crank. He's separated the spring out of it. It's a split seal for this conversion that we're doing on this car. So we'll fit that, and then we'll put the crank in, and we'll do the thrust washer end clearance. All right, we've got the bearing caps installed, just snugged down. We've got standard thrust washers installed, at least temporarily, until we take a measurement. So that will be the next step. So rear main seal is in. Thrust washers are there. Like I said, we'll put the dial indicator on it and check the end float, and then we'll come back and decide what we need to do as far as thrust washers are concerned, if we need to go oversized or not. All right, the crank is in and torqued down to 90 foot-pounds with the standard thrust washers. So now on to the next step. Alin's going to tackle the front seal. So we're putting the cork seals in, which are always fun. And I'm going to tackle the rear seals here for the rear main cap with the felt soaked in the Permatex Aviation. So I've got the little felt squares here. Just gonna soak those in this forma gasket, and we're gonna ram them down here like we're getting ready to fire a musket down these two holes here. Fill them up, trim them off, and we're good to go there. All right, front sealing block is in with the little cork gaskets here affixed and straight edged across the front of the block to make sure it's square. And we've got the rear seal in now, or the rear cap, with the little felt stuffing here with the Permatex Aviation. So that's ready to go. So we are on to the next step and figure out what that's going to be. I think we might go back to the top now, and we're probably going to go back to our figure 8 gaskets and liners and get those put into place permanently. They are, like I said, we just put them in temporarily to measure the deck height on the cylinder liners to make sure we had the proper clearance. Now we'll go back, we'll do the gasket maker there along the figure 8 gaskets and along the bottom of the cylinders themselves, or the liners themselves, and then we'll call this good and then go to the next step. All right, the figure 8 gaskets have now been Permatexed, and the liners have been refitted in order. We numbered them, and now they're just snugged down here with the tubes again. I think the next step for us now is to break out the piston rings, and we'll do some measurements in the bores, according to the manual, fitting them down square. We'll check the ring gaps and we'll organize them out here accordingly on this nice piece of clean paper, and we'll make some recordings as to what the gaps are initially, and then we might stagger them around as required. All right, so we've got top, middle, and oil control rings, and they are labeled in the bags. First ring, second ring, and then, what does this one say? Oil ring. So you can't really mix them up. These have a dot on the top, maybe?
They have writing, but
Writing?
it doesn't say top.
Okay.
But here it's
Sometimes
showing.
they have a dot, sometimes they have writing. So whatever you do, follow what it says on the rings. And we'll go ahead and, like I said, put those in the bores. We're going to use one piston to push them down, which we have sitting right over here. And then we'll take our measurements and figure out what we need to do in a little bit. All right, I'm not going to lie, we're not real happy with the ring gaps, at least on the top ring. And these were part of a kit. So this is the piston and liner kit that we bought. So these are the rings that actually came with it. So the spec is 10 to 15 thou on the ring gap. And we're getting slightly more than that on the top ring, at least. A little bit closer on the middle ring. So anyway, we're just going to go with it. We're going to close our eyes and we're going to go with it. And all is going to be good. So we're just building up pistons to the connecting rods. So number one over here, ready to go. We'll put the bearings in later. So all Lynn's doing is making sure that the oil passages are clear in the rods themselves. Just blowing some compressed air through it. And he's going to town assembling rings. So we're good to go there. So we'll be installing pistons shortly. Lynn asked me if I had the keys. He thinks we're going to be starting and driving this tonight. Yeah. I don't think so. All right, pistons are assembled and ready to go. So we've got our bearings ready here again, king bearings for the connecting rods. So we're going to oil those up. We've got the ring compressor there. We've got a wooden handled hammer we're going to use to punch them in. So we'll position the crank so that we don't hit the journals, and we'll do them one by one. All right, pistons are in and caps are all torqued down with the locking plates installed and bent. We've got a new oil pump, so we just rescued the old strainer and cleaned that. We're putting that on. So we're getting ready pretty much to just put the oil pan cover on just to keep it protected. And then we'll probably call it a day for now and come back at it.
We're not starting it?
Not today, like I mentioned, getting a little late. So we'll come back another day and work on it for a few hours more and continue on. All right, we're just about to work on the front engine plate, which we have down here ready to go. So we're just getting the gasket affixed here. We've taken the cam keeper out and we just have it down here temporarily. So we've got the gasket surfaces on the inside prepared. We're just going to Permatex Aviation the outside of this, and then we'll fit the engine plate and we'll put the cam keeper back in and get ready to install the cam and crank gears. All right, still making progress here on the front end of the engine. So Alin's making a dowel pin for me as we're missing this pin up here. So we've got the front engine plate on. We've got the crank gear on, and we've got the cam gear on just loosely. We're getting ready to do the measurement across with a straight edge to see if we need any shims behind the crank gear. So that's what we're up to at the moment. And we're probably not going to go much further than this today. But I just have the timing chain cover bolts in just to make sure I had all of those. They will of course come out, but they're in a good spot where I won't lose them at the moment. So we'll leave them there until I need to pull them out. So that's where we're at on the front of the engine. All right, guys, welcome back to the Rusty Beauty Shop. It's Friday, the 21st of June, I believe. And we're gonna make a run for it today. And we're gonna try to finish off this engine rebuild and possibly even get it back in the car and running and broken in. We do have to do a cam break-in, brand new cam, obviously brand new lifters as well. So we've got pretty much everything ready to go. I don't think we're missing any parts, but got a pretty good selection of stuff to work with this morning, all laid out and ready to go. New and obviously used and cleaned parts are ready to go. So all the gaskets we have that are required are here, and actually more than required. So we've got some backups just in case and we run into any issues. So we're pretty much good to go as far as parts are concerned. So just waiting for Alin to come out, change into his work clothes, and we'll get started back on this by doing the alignment on the gears. So straight edge across the gears. We've got some shims handy. If we need to shim the crank sprocket out, we'll do that. But like I said, we'll just wait for Alin to come out and then we'll start ripping on this thing. And hopefully by the end of the day, it's probably going to be a long day, we'll be ready to get this back in the car. And like I said, hopefully started and maybe broken in. All right, so we checked the alignment with a straight edge on the two gears, and it actually aligns perfectly. So no shims behind the crank gear. We have the Woodruff keys in, so we're ready to go there. I think what we're gonna do now, we're gonna leave the oil slinger off for now. I just put it there so we wouldn't forget. I think what we're gonna do now is we're gonna actually check the lift of the cam. It's a new cam, and we just wanna verify the specs that we have. So we're gonna drop the lifters in, and we're gonna set up a dial indicator to check the actual lift of the cam before we go any further. All right, tappets are just being cleaned. We're gonna lube them up with assembly lube, and we're gonna drop them in the bores so we can do that lift measurement on the cam. We only need one, obviously, but I may as well put them all in so I don't forget and have to take the head back off. All right, I don't know if I mentioned this already, but the reason why we're measuring the lift of the cam is because there was some confusion as to the actual cam that I ordered versus the cam that was delivered. And there's some confusion over the part numbers from the company that we ordered it from. So originally I thought I had ordered a fast road cam. So we have the specs up here for the fast road cam. And we're just doing the test of the lift, and we're getting 290 on the lift. So that would seem to mean to us that we are looking at a road cam versus a fast road cam. We also went back and looked at parts numbers, and although I thought I had ordered a fast road cam, the number that was corresponding beside the fast road cam was the actual 1104N number, not the 1004 number. So somehow the numbers on the catalog we ordered from were incorrect as well. So anyway, we're trying to get to the bottom of it. So we're doing a few tests here to determine what exact cam I have, but we're thinking at the moment that it's the road cam. So we'll do some more tests along the way. So it's a little disappointing. We wanted to go fast road, but hey, we're looking like we're gonna be doing the road cam thing. All right, so I'm not sure if I've mentioned, but timing is now set. So we've got the tabs on the cam gear bent over. We've got the tensioner pin, new tensioner pin in, and the new tensioner. We've got the little pedestal here for the timing cover so it doesn't collapse in. We have the oil slinger on in place, ready to go. We are putting Hylamar on the timing chain cover gasket, as I feel that this one, it was a little bent when we took it off. It was actually put on there quite heavily with RTV. So we did sort of straighten it on the press as best as we could, but I think we're going to give it a little bit extra help here with some Hylamar and a gasket, and we'll go from there. So just about to pop the cover on, and we'll go on to the next step. All right, we've just been kind of moving along here. We've got the pulley back together, the crank snout on. In our case, it's a alternator bracket. It would have originally been a generator bracket, but we've converted to an alternator. I've just cleaned off this little area for eventually for the water pump, and we've got the filter assembly and the oil filter assembled over here, so we're good to go on this side. Don't think we're going to put the fuel pump on yet because that'll just be in the way when we go to install it, so we'll do that afterwards. So getting close. On the engine wise, Lynn is actually working on putting the head back together. So guides are installed. We're just doing the springs. Again, according to the Moss diagram, with our camshaft, there's a specific requirement for springs and collars, which we have. So we're going to go ahead and install those now. All right, we're just about ready to put the head on. So we had to make a decision as to whether we were going to go with this copper gasket. Since we're going with the oversized liners, we weren't quite sure whether we needed an oversized gasket. And then if you look at different sources, some say yes, some say no. So we put this on and did a trial fit, and we think that would actually work. But we did invest in a more expensive gasket for oversized bores. So you can see it installed here. It's a little silicone, I think, in it. So I think we'll go with this, and hopefully that works as well as the copper gaskets that I've had pretty good success with in the past. So hopefully we don't come back and decide that this was a bad idea. But anyway, it's there, and we're ready to put the head on. Valves are installed over here. Jet Rusty. Rusty's waiting for a Timbit. So head's ready to go. So we're just about ready to pop that on. So we'll go ahead and we'll do that now. All right, we're torquing the head in increments up to 105 foot-pounds. And we're doing the cross pattern or inside-out pattern. So you can follow the manual if you like, but that's what we're up to.
Well, that's what the manual says.
Yeah, there's a diagram in the manual, or numbered diagram, so we just don't happen to have the manual out. All right, it's definitely a good day to be working in the garage. It's been kind of raining on and off all day today. Anyway, I can't remember exactly where we left off, but rocker shaft is on and the valves are adjusted according to what it says on our manual. So these are a little bit wider gap. They are 13 plus 5, initially set cold.
Yeah.
And then they need to be set hot back to 13. So we've got 18 in here right now for lash, and then we'll check it again once they're hot. We've got the spout in here for the heater valve. We've got the water spigot there. Yes, it's upside down. We know that. Dipstick, distributor pedestal, although we're going to have to take this back out to prime the oil pump. That is there. Can't put the fuel pump on yet. Push rods are in, obviously. Water pump and the feed pipe are there. New pulley, new water pump. Not new pulley, but new water pump. So that's looking pretty good. And we've got a bunch of parts over here to go on later. So I think what we're going to do now is we're going to flip the engine over, and we're going to go back to the oil pan, put the oil pan gasket on and seal that up tight. And then we can go probably from there.
Yeah, then flywheel and clutch and can go in the car.
Yep, getting pretty close.
Did you bring the keys?
I did actually. I brought another set. I know you have a set and I have a set. I brought a set just in case.
Okay.
All right. All right, we've got her hooked up to the engine hoist, and we're just about to get it off the stand and back down near the floor so we can finish off the rear of the engine. So we've got to put the cam plug in here at the rear, and we also need to obviously get the flywheel put on. So that's what we're going to do now. We're just about to detach it from the engine stand for the last time. So there we go. All right, still plugging away. We started at 8:30 this morning, basically, or around there, maybe 9 o'clock. And I think it's just around 8 o'clock in the PM. Just had some dinner. And we've now got the car up on stands at the front, just taking the wheels off. Engine's ready to go back in. So we're getting a little closer, running a little behind schedule. Well, 10 p.m. update. It's been a pretty long day. We made a lot of progress, but not quite as much progress as I think we wanted to make. Anyway, the engine's in, and we started buttoning things up, like putting the alternator on. Is done. The exhaust system's hooked up. The starter is in. We started with the trans mount in, drive shafts in. So got a fair amount done in here. So we're gonna pick it up tomorrow. I don't think we're gonna go much longer. I'm getting kind of tired. And I think it'd probably be better if we get at it fresh tomorrow for a few more hours to finish this off. So we don't want to rush it. We want to make sure we do everything properly. So we'll pick it back up tomorrow morning. We'll see you then.
See you tomorrow.